Captain's Log, Stardate 41153.2. It is a time of conflict. All major races are at war. Diplomacy is dead, age-old alliances forgotten, and galactic borders ignored, as each race battles for supremacy. Powerful fleets prowl the galaxy, establishing outposts, vanquishing indigenous and enemy fleets alike in the pursuit of the ultimate prize, the capture of all homeworlds and galactic domination. Kurtzman, is that you?
This is for Earth! I can smell our victory! Enemy turret destroyed! Enemy turret eliminated.
Enemy turret destroyed. Enemy starbase, more prey for the hunt.
Before we dive into today's video, let's take a bit of a history lesson, kids, because as the old saying goes, context is king. So once upon a time, there was this show called Star Trek: The Next Generation. It first premiered on syndication television on September 28, 1987, with a 2-hour pilot episode, Encounter at Farpoint. The very first scene of that episode, according to the very first recorded captain's log of newly minted Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the Galaxy-class starship USS Enterprise NCC-1701D, took place on Stardate 41153.7, which would subsequently place today's subject matter within the same time frame, if not the very same day, maybe a few hours beforehand. Now, for anyone unfamiliar with next-gen lore, the United Federation of Planets and the Klingon Empire were best buds, more or less. The newly teased adversary at the time were the diabolical and very evil Ferengi Alliance. Yes, those guys. Starfleet officers wore spandex for uniforms. Romulans were in hibernation until the first season finale, The Neutral Zone, during which time they grew forehead bumps for some reason. And finally, a new starship, Enterprise, would be commanded by yet another bald captain, only this one doesn't have to wear a hairpiece. However, according to this opening spiel, while the starship Enterprise was engaged in going boldly where none have gone before, the Federation was already at war with the Klingons, the Romulans, the Cardassian Union, the Green Refrigeration Unit, the Borg Collective, and the Dorminion, despite the fact that the Dominion wouldn't be a thing until several years down the road. And as for the Borg, look, this is not something worth thinking too hard about. It'll only hurt your brain. Just sit back, relax, and accept that this is the thinly veiled plot device that serves as the premise for today's subject matter, Star Trek Conquest, a turn-based strategy game for Sony PlayStation 2 and also available for the original Nintendo Wii. The differences between the two versions are minimal. PS2 version was the cheaper budget release, while the Wii version was a touch pricier but had pointer controls with the Wii remote, which makes navigation slightly more convenient. Nowadays you could go either or, but would you want to is the real question. Star Trek Conquest is a lightweight, turn-based strategy game with bits of arcade shooter elements where the premise revolves around you selecting one of the 6 main galactic powers and going about conquering the galaxy and disposing of the other galactic powers. This naturally means building up your star fleets, warping to other systems, and claiming them from their occupants, whether it's held by one of the other main empires, or a minor race such as the Xindi, the Ferengi, or the Borg. Yes, the Borg is considered a minor race in this game, figure that one out. Building up your star bases and mining operations to establish footholds in your territories and basically continuing onwards until the entire galaxy is under your control. When you begin a new game, you'll be asked to not only select an empire to represent, but also one of 3 admirals to command your initial star fleet. I do appreciate that 2 of your Federation admirals are actually from the first season of Next Generation, which is when this thing is supposed to take place, though why the third happens to be the fake admiral from that Voyager episode with the fake Starfleet Academy with this 8472, and you had Admiral Quinn. You had the one admiral who took the magic drugs that made him younger and eventually die. Shit, I'm surprised you didn't give us Admiral McCoy or Admiral Ross or... Oh, General Martok is here too. And he has one eye, even though... Right, okay, fine. My brain hurts. Fuck it. Moving on. So you have 3 admirals to choose from per empire, though eventually all 3 will be commanding fleets. This limits things because once all 3 admirals are spacebound, you can no longer create any more fleets until you lose one of your existing ones. But each admiral falls under 3 types: attack, defense, and movement. Attack fleets have slightly more attack power, defense fleets have better defense ratings, and movement fleets can move 2 spots per turn. As your fleets win battles and conquer systems, they'll earn experience that will earn you promotions for your fleets and give them higher bonuses, though all this is lost when your fleet goes bye-bye. There's a bit of depth and management here in terms of resources. Over time, you could upgrade certain skills such as improving your mining rates or your ship turning rates. You could create research stations that could build towards special weapons that you could use against your foes, which depends on the empire you've chosen. Some empires have Genesis torpedoes, which can severely damage ships and bases within a star system. Others have wormhole devices that can make for more convenient travel, things of that nature. At the end of the day, though, Conquest is not a fully fleshed out strategy game. You've got some management here and there, but you're not concerned with morale or interspecies relations, and the only diplomacy to be found here is that of the cowboy variety. Simply put, the main means of managing things and progress in Star Trek Conquest is through
War! I'm gonna stab you in the fucking face!
Each time you enter a new system that is not under your control, whether it be a neutral system or that belonging to a rival empire, a tactical display will appear to show you your opposition. Now, if you feel the numbers are against you, you can order a retreat and your fleet will return to its previous spot, but that's a move on the board lost. If you choose to engage the enemy, you have a couple means of doing so. One is to just let the computer handle things and hope the numbers work in your favor. Another would be the sim mode, which gives you some control over fleet tactics, but again, only really ideal if the numbers are in your favor, which leaves you with one last option where you have the most control over the odds: arcade, also known as skirmish mode. In skirmish mode, you control one of the starships in your fleet, and your main goal is to eliminate all your opposition. That means every enemy starship, installation, and turret must be wiped out in order to claim victory. You use the left analog stick to steer your ship and the right analog stick to aim your weapons, as indicated by the highlighted area. You can assign fleet formations with the face buttons, while the D-pad lets you take control of another ship in your fleet. Skirmishes in Conquest play out similarly to Bethesda's other Star Trek budget title at the time, Star Trek Encounters, which we've sampled ages ago, but this is far simpler. You're moving along a strictly 2D plane. There are no instances of flying through warp rings or anything of the sort. You show up, you blow shit up, and try not to leave the battlefield, because if you do, it counts as a fleet loss. Not a retreat, but a fleet loss, as in your fleet blows up, which is stupid, but whatever. Victory in Conquest mode is achieved when all homeworlds have been claimed and all enemy fleets are defeated. Winning in Conquest mode unlocks a new item in the standalone skirmish mode, and what you unlock depends on what empire you lead to victory. What doesn't matter in this case is the difficulty setting, of which Conquest offers 3. On easy, you're given the most credits and total visibility of the galaxy board, while normal and hard implements a fog of war that limits your overall view. You don't earn anything extra for clearing the game on higher difficulties or with more opponents on the board. An easy game with just one rival empire is enough to unlock your prize should you beat your campaign, and for the record, you can unlock Xindi ships, Borg ships, a second set of Federation vessels, and 3 more skirmish maps, the latter of which is just window dressing, but it's something they throw in there to try and add some replay value to this thing, because let's be honest, there isn't much replay to be found in Star Trek Conquest. You've got 6 empires to play with, but other than some minor differences in cosmetics and armaments, they all practically play the same. The game never takes advantage of some of the more unique aspects of each empire. No cloaking technology for the Klingons or Romulans, no espionage advantages for Cardassians or anything like that. All these races are just skins for the sake of familiarity, almost all of them entirely interchangeable and completely meaningless. The strategy aspect of Conquest is also fairly limited. Granted, I'm not entirely opposed to the game being purely about forceful domination or anything like that, but it would have been nice if you had trade routes and things of that nature to make that portion more interesting. Not having more than 3 fleets on the board at any one time feels a bit eh. I mean, look, what's there is functional enough, and as someone who doesn't regularly play strategy games, this kept me somewhat engaged, no pun intended, but this plays like the bare minimum of a strategy game, and honestly, in regards to Star Trek especially, I don't have to tell you that there's enough in that genre that does a better job of representing that franchise as a whole if you know where to look. Ultimately, the strategy portion is just padding for the game's strongest suit, which is the arcade-style skirmish mode of shooting things with your starship and trying not to get blown up and stuff. As I said, this is basically a stripped-down version of Encounters, the previous Bethesda Star Trek budget release. You fly along a simple 2D plane, you use the right stick to aim your weapons, you have limited command over your fleet, and it's nothing but explosions from there. Again, it's functional enough, controls are responsive and not all that difficult to grasp, there's not a whole lot to it, and as a multiplayer thing, there is some fun to be had if you just want arcade-style starship shooting action. On that alone, Conquest gets the job done, but again, if you want a little more, you're probably not going to get it here. So I'm not going to poo-poo the graphical aspect of Conquest because there's really no point considering this was a budget title that they sold for like $10-20 back in the day. All I will say is that the game does manage to recreate the various ships from the Star Trek universe and such at the time, so you can recognize the Galaxy class, the Romulan warbirds, the Cardassian ships and whatnots, because they all look the part. They probably recycled these ship models from their other budget Trek title that they released beforehand. Now, are they the most detailed ships? Of course not, but they serve their purpose for this game. The various menus and displays you'll navigate through in the strategic portions of the game are also adequate. They tell you everything you need to know in the most functional way possible, not the most appealing thing, but they get the job done. And of course, Star Trek Conquest also features mediocre sound output. Yes, you have some of the stock Star Trek sound effects, and all the phasers and torpedoes sound like phasers and such. Recycled sounds are recycled, and they do a fine job recycling. The music is also seemingly recycled from the last Star Trek budget title that they put out. I had to double check, and a couple tunes sound somewhat familiar, and it's not good. Anyone hoping for any semblance of familiar Star Trek themes will find none of that here, but rather a bland and fruitless soundtrack. And then, of course, there's the little bits of voice acting in this game, and I'll tell you what, some of the taunts in this game are just god-awful and a cheesy, I don't know, whatever. I mean, you got lines like,
This is for Earth!
hey, to each your own, right? Overall, when it comes to Star Trek Conquest, you pretty much get what you paid for. It's a budget title with a budget effort and absolutely no real care put into it. For what it's worth, it's functional enough, it's competently executed enough, it does what it does well enough, but it's also textbook licensed cash grab for those lowly PS2 and Wii folks who couldn't afford an Xbox 360 to play Bethesda's much more hyped Star Trek Legacy game or whatever it was called. Anyways, that was Star Trek Conquest on PS2. It exists, it works, but you have far better options out there. Oh, and happy May the 4th. I know that's a Star Wars thing, but we play Star Trek around here because Star Trek is, well, let's be honest, the better thing these days, which is not saying a whole lot, but yeah.